And so basically we started from ground zero on that day.
We did. Yeah, so we worked on a weekend and we started working together. It was a team effort. And what I think was really helpful, and we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, is that you had already gone through this process. You had already financed homes through being a foreign national. So you already had an idea of what the underwriter would be looking for, right?
Correct.
So you already, everything was perfectly laid out. I was blown away, right? And we're talking about, you had German bank statements, you had,
that had to be translated,
that
right?
had to be translated,
that has been
right?
like the huge stumbling block that we had to take care of.
Yeah, and not just translated, but also converted in terms of the currency.
Correct.
Right? Because everything is in euro, right? So we had to make that transition, that translation and that conversion. We also had to source all of that documentation, but you had it already, which it just made that process go so much smoother. Being able to have that full file, all of those documents. And then, really, as I mentioned, it was a leap of faith, because typically when I have somebody that is, looking to get approved for a loan, and in a traditional sense, right? So we're talking about someone who lives and works in the U.S. I'm looking at their pay stubs and I'm verifying the income. I'm looking at their W-2s, and I'm also looking at their bank statements and making sure they have those assets and making sure there aren't any, large deposits from an uncle that wasn't accounted for in terms of a gift or anything like that. So I'm doing all that due diligence, but we didn't have that flexibility because you had a property ready to go. Right? So I looked at the balance sheet and said, okay, so here's the income. This is what it looks like from the asset standpoint. And I said, okay, there's going to be a home for this, right? And my initial thought was, I've got a particular broker, right? So at Guaranteed Rate, we have two channels, right? So we have the direct channel, which would be the traditional loans, so the Fannies and Freddies, and then if it's larger than 647-200, which is the conforming loan amount in Texas, then I go outside and I go to my jumbo investors. But anytime we're working with foreign national, that's outside the box, right? So that's outside the traditional scope. And it's fortunate that Guaranteed Rate, we've got a large broker channel, right? So these are the non-QM or non-qualified mortgage loans that are really designed to sit on the investor's books, right? So they don't sell these loans amongst other banks. They hold them, right? Because they see these types of loans as makes sense, right? It just makes sense to offer these loans, because clearly with the amount of money that you're putting down, right? So the typical with a foreign national is you're putting down 55%. Where on an investment property, right? You can also buy a second home, and I think it's 50% depending on the particular investor. But you actually are, you bought this as an investment property. You're going to have a tenant there, so you're putting down 55%. And we're then basing it off of, again, that debt service coverage ratio, right? So we're basing it off the rental income, and that's the main qualifier. But we started where I had a particular investor in mind. And then we completely, shifted gears, and I was kind of like Lending Tree, right? So I sent out the bids to 9 different brokers and said, I need a home for this, and all of them responded, right? And some were fit, some were not. But the one that came in number one, they were on top of it, right? And they said, this is how it's going to happen, and get me the information, and we're going to get that file into underwriting, which was so key, right? Because with this transaction, we had a 5 days, not business days, 5 days to get the underwriting approval, right? So not only am I working against a deadline where I need to make sure that we have a full file and the underwriter can give their blessing, I'm working with another company, right? So that was really key. And we worked, you and I, we worked all around the clock. And what was so great was when I was going to bed, you were working, and then vice versa, right? So having that time difference actually was an advantage, because I could say, okay, here are the things that we need. and then I can go to bed, and then I wake up in the morning, it's
there.
There it is. Right? So, so that's kind of the setup with the whole piece.